It's time to leave your cinematic troubles behind. Let the takes flow through you. And let the noise from the zeitgeist subside. Welcome to Cast Against Time.
Welcome to Cast Against Type. I am joined by also host.
We have like direct line to each other. I just realized.
I don't like it.
I looked up and we just locked eyes.
I am Colin J. Dixon, and I am joined by Matthew Slam Dance Frank, and we are joined today by a very, very special person.
Hit the applause.
Also host William Bill Boudel.
Wow. That's quite an introduction, please.
We are very excited to have
Yes.
Bill.
I'm excited to be here.
And Bill is no stranger to the cinematic audio programs, which is impossible because we're the only one. But, you know, sometimes like there are adjacent offshoots. People try their hand at like kind of like cinematic adjacent things. There's never been like a film podcast
That's just film.
that's just talking about film, like the two white men have done. So, but no, seriously, can you give us any kind of like a primer on your background? I know you're a filmmaker, raconteur, editor.
I just want to say first that when I found out that two white men had a film podcast, I had to contact you.
Yes.
And listen to all of the episodes immediately.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for understanding the plight.
I recommend that everybody do the same.
Wow. You hear that?
Thank
you hear that?
We did not force him to say this.
No.
We didn't force him to listen to the episodes either. I was quite shocked when he told us that. And but at least we know that he knows what he's in for. I don't know how you like to identify who you are, what you do. I mean, I know that you're a multi-talented individual.
Okay, so I guess I could say that I write, direct, and edit things, large and small, mostly writing and directing smaller short-form things right now, and editing longer feature-type things with the idea of directing something longer form soon.
Nice.
Awesome.
Now, a mutual friend of ours tells me that you are something of a 48-hour film festival virtuoso. Is this true?
Wow, that's a lot. I did participate twice during the pandemic because I was going crazy. We did well, but not as well as some, and maybe better than others. And we were very happy to be participating and having a nice time with each other.
I'm always really curious and like intrigued about that stuff. Like, so you've done it twice. Would you do it a third time? Would you recommend it? Like, how was your experience with that? Just like, on like getting a film done in 2 days.
I absolutely recommend it, especially, well, actually in any position, whether you're editing or directing or writing, it's all to do it in such a short time and with the limitations that they give you, to do it in a way that is genuine, that is to follow the rules, to really not have an idea of what you're going to do, at least for the most part. It's a real ride because it's so much pressure. You have to write the script during that 48, and that I had already done a competition that my group had won where we could come in with a script. And that made it so much easier, but to actually have to write it in the same 48 hours and direct it and shoot it and, have somebody doing whatever else, sound composing, and then editing it. And
because they give you the prompts like at the starting line, essentially, right?
Yeah,
like,
the prompts are, let me see if I remember. It's a prop. It is a name, and it is a line of dialogue, and you have to incorporate them organically. You can't just I've heard some people try to shoot the thing beforehand and then incorporate those things later, during the 48 hours. Yeah. And they say they're really good at identifying that. So you shouldn't be doing that. But if you do everything during the 48, it sounds hard. I think it's even harder than maybe I realized. And I really enjoyed it because it made me think on my feet a lot.
how does permitting work like that? Because it takes a long time to permit.
Oh, it's all guerrilla.
Right? So you're just doing you're just
I'm
doing
sorry,
guerrilla
permits.
Yeah, you're just running, gunning, and
Absolutely.
doing it real quick.
Just the most connected 48-hour film participant in history. Just
Just
gets
the county knows
shooting
for these
down-
48 hours
Right.
that there's just going to be crews
I
everywhere,
have 3 minutes to shoot this scene.
drones everywhere for the 48 hours.
No, talk about not knowing what you're doing. I tried to shoot in Griffith Park on a Saturday during the 48, and it was not a good idea. Don't do that, folks.
Let's go up to the observatory. Yeah.
They'll get a lot of extras at least.
Oh my gosh,
Surely will.
Yeah, we were trying to get an abandoned street, and we were driving around forever, and it was just But anyway, yeah, it was fun. I recommend it.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining us. He made the trek all the way down to Redondo Beach from Hollywood. So you may have seen all manner of Cybertrucks, especially.
The test, I did see a Cybertruck.
Did you finally see the grand piano?
Well,
The Cybertruck?
I've seen them frequently, but I saw one right before I got on the 405. So it was more in the valley, surprisingly.
And
but the Teslas do get a lot more
Right.
frequent as you get closer to your
How many
pad.
flags were flying off the back of it? Never mind.
There's a lot of flags and houses around here.
Now, I'm also, that's for damn sure. I am glad also that you have been a listener, because Bill's not drinking with us, which is good, because this will offer fresh perspective. By the end of the episode, we will just be floundering, and it'll just be interesting when we go back through the audio and the video just to see the looks of horror or disappointment, on Bill's face.
I was going to say, if you don't hear him in segment 3, you'll know we scared him off before we started that one.
You guys are great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to our talk.
Before we get into our segments, and I'll explain our segments, I did hear a little factoid that I want to test the veracity of it with the two of you. So, Oliver Reed, we all know and love. Yeah?
No.
Okay, you're the one. No, but we all know he died shooting Gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Apparently there's some bad CGI used in kind of recreating him for the purposes of shooting later in the film. I don't think I've ever recognized any of those shots, but I guess it's been about 15 years since I've seen that film.
Did this recently come out? Because I did not know of this.
I didn't know this either.
Oh, okay. Well, so he died of a heart attack during Gladiator, and I felt like that was common knowledge. But what is not common knowledge is a thing that I recently stumbled across that the U.S. Naval Institute tweeted for some very strange reason. They tweeted, on this day in 1999, Oliver Reed died while filming Gladiator. Reed had consumed 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, and shots of cognac after challenging sailors from HMS Cumberland to a drinking contest in a pub. He was arm wrestling sailors when he collapsed. Now,
Yeah, but why'd he die,
That's
though?
an awesome.
That's what I wanna
an
know.
Awesome way. Yeah, was it the pressure from the arm wrestling, or was it the alcohol?
we'll never know. It could be, yeah. I mean, does anyone die in Over the Top?
No, nobody
Okay.
dies in Over the Top, just egos.
Right.
No, well, the kid. You also learned that a child can travel from California to Las Vegas by himself and still make a competition
The
in
80s
like
were-
5 hours.
80s were a different
less
time.
than 5 hours. I think he drove all the way there, or then flew part of it. Either way, he did it by himself to get there for his dad's competition.
Wow.
It's a great film.
Canon classic.
But wow, nice.
Directed by
nice-
Menachem Golan. Wow. The guy who, one of the 2 guys who ran Canon.
I told you about this. Now, also, that's one thing that Bill was too modest to mention about himself. He's a lexicon of
Encyclopedia.
cinema. Yes, and that's why also we were quite excited to have you, because these are the kinds of garden paths that at least I am unable to go through on my own.
That's not true. Colin knows a great deal.
Please. No,
And I'm
You don't
getting
have
Matt
to say that. He
probably,
doesn't.
Matt, you know quite a bit too. I've been listening to you. You
try.
watch.
I
You
try.
watch.
Thank
You do
you.
things. You think about them.
Someone appreciates me.
Matt grounds me in modern shit that I would never know to find, let alone seek out.
I was surprised you hadn't heard of Beginners when he mentioned it. I haven't seen Beginners by Mike Mills, but
Yeah.
I know of it. You probably saw a trailer for it and you just don't remember that it
Just
happened.
hate Christopher Plummer and didn't want to see it.
Yeah, you know my how deep my Christopher Plummer hate goes. No, not at all. Not at all.
It's Mike Mills hate.
No, but no, so I brought up the Oliver Reed thing because doesn't this feel like the best way to go?
Arm wrestling sailors.
Isn't this his
drunk?
best? Like living his 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, even if you don't drink.
It sounds like the Oliver Reed way to go.
Yeah.
It sounds like, yes, that's Oliver Reed. That's who he was. That's how he died. That makes absolute sense.
I guess my Oliver Reed knowledge is relatively limited. Obviously famous for the Hammer films. Obviously the Cronenberg's The Brood, is it?
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yeah, I do have a few Oliver Reed blind spots, but whenever he pops up, he's a value add, I feel. Anyway.
Absolutely.
I suppose we should get right onto it, Mr. Frank.
Get on to what?
Get onto the show.
What show?
What show? You might ask. I might answer. Actually, you know what? You would think I would have it committed to memory at this point, but I don't. No, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it solo. This is inside baseball. Usually I have to read this. I think I'm ready.
Do it.
All right.
Do it.
A show where we try to restore some sanity, doing the Italian hands thing, to the discourse as it pertains to the world of cinema.
It did it.
And we do this in one of three ways. First, by adjudicating the cinematic conundrum submitted by you, the listener. Two, by doing something we come across the social media.
Yeah, you hit one so solidly, and then I blanked on two as well.
By judging things we
See
discover
out there,
online,
yeah.
in the media, be it social or otherwise.
There
And
it
three, by exploring random, mysterious media oddities. I did it!
Yay!
No.
Yeah, you get a half womp womp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to start.
Yeah.
We need to start having people walk through the door to that music, like a WWF wrestling entrance.
I am actually very disappointed. I wanted to get the for Bill. I wanted to get the Kill Bill.
Bill.
You know that, but I couldn't. I just didn't have time. So
I didn't know that your amazing effects are only on your mic. I thought that just you were the only one who was using them because you were.
Anybody can have at the effects. In fact, here, go ahead. Give it a whirl. Give it a whirl. Do it. Yeah,
that's fun.
Oh, man.
Bill, you want to have
What power?
Just pick a random effect.
Okay, let me see if I can reach it.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Absolutely, that was very 80s.
all right. Yeah, it was. I feel like a J.C. Penney just opened
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think is Paula Abdul here.
So yeah, part of the reason I wanted to get the ball rolling a little bit sooner than later is I think that this. Well, first of all, we're very lucky to have a guest for another reason is we didn't have to do any homework.
Nope.
No, we have a backlog of questions. We're very grateful for the ones that have been submitted, but our dear guest is bringing one of his own, and it's actually pretty interesting. So Bill came to me off mic, and he explained to me that his conundrum, which, you know, there's all kinds of problems that get brought to us on the show. Some people are tired of too much damn motorcycles, tired of too much cover music in their trailers, or, you know, whatever it is. Bill had something a little bit different, and he wanted to talk to us about a filmmaker from a certain pantheon of filmmakers that frankly just isn't getting his due, and whose influences can actually be felt pretty far-reaching into a number of Hollywood projects and filmmakers. So instead of the normal kind of granular issue that we would normally try to come to some conclusions on, we're actually going to investigate the works of a particular director, and we're going to do that through a particular lens. It's a little bit different from like what we kind of usually do, and like so I'm kind of eager to get right into it. So, Bill, you were telling me about a filmmaker that you much admire and whose films you've been visiting lately. Do you want to kind of take it from there and explain what we'll be talking about in segment Uno?
Sure. So the films, I've been watching the Tales of Four Seasons cycle by Eric Rohmer, who was part of the French New Wave. Some people call him the father of the French New Wave. And he has had a great deal of influence on a number of American auteurs, probably others as well in other countries. And I find him fascinating. I find his influence fascinating. Really, the way he told films is entirely unique, and some might say uncinematic. Others would say they are cinematic, and that's actually something that I'd like to talk to you guys about because his films are talky as hell.
Yes. Most assuredly.
Jinx.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, they're drinking, folks. They're drinking.
Isn't that how it works? You're supposed to drink first?
I just wanted
I
to
might
drink.
be the only person conscious by the end of this.
Perfect.
No, but so they certainly are a talky bunch of films, all of them. Now, I would even go so far as to say possibly you couldn't call them plot-driven. Would that be fair to say?
I'd say that's fair. I'd say there is a plot, but they're not plot-driven. I think that's absolutely fair.
You can lose. Yeah, I think there's a goal in mind with the plot, or there's an end game with each movie, but that's not what's important. It's like I found myself when I was watching them of, oh, this is where the movie is probably going to go, and then it just kind of just goes in its own
Matthew!
way. Yeah.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Sorry.
All right. No, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. But I did just want to also say that, so for the purposes of framing the discussion, we're going to detail a lot of our discussion around Tale of Springtime, but we've got the other the other three films in our pocket that will kind of inform our discussion. And Mr. Romero has quite a spectrum of films, and as Mr. Boudel alluded to, often described as one of the fathers of the French Wave, and that's because of part of his founding role with the Cahiers du Cinéma, right?
He was editor of the Cahiers du Cinéma for a while and was one of the early writers on it. He also had a previous magazine that he wrote for, a film magazine that wasn't successful, and then he went on to Cahiers, and that was very successful.
Was that L'Esprit?
Could be. Okay. I don't actually remember the name, but yes.
And now eventually the sons of bitches at the Cahiers, they turned his back on him, did they not? They kicked him out.
Why? Might be something I don't know. What I do know about that period is that various new wave auteurs began gaining traction and fame in the late 50s, early 60s. Romero came along a little later, even though he was older than them.
Yes.
Which is interesting. And he also, some might say, lasted longer as a commercial filmmaker.
Right, because he paired up with, Barbet Schrader.
Barbet Schroeder, yes. Yes.
He paired up with Barbet Schroeder, and that's why he was able to successfully finance a bunch of his films in the later years. But so, as I guess, kind of a primer for our audience who may not have heard Mr. Romero, how would you describe his body of work? So what he's kind of famous for are these two, I guess you'd call them cycles. I don't know if that's how he refers to them. But one is a series of moral films, and then the other is the Tales of Seasons. Yeah,
there's the 6 moral tales. These are the Tales of 4 Seasons, which supposedly was inspired by Vivaldi's 4 Seasons. And then there's also comedies and proverbs. And the way I would describe his films is that they're films where people talk about thought a great deal. They talk about ideas. Right. They talk about philosophy. They talk about relationships and how it applies to the real world. And he does so, I think, in a very intriguing way, and in a way that takes something that one would think isn't cinematic, which is dialogue, and makes it cinematic. In other words, the action in his films is actually through the dialogue and through the ideas. And you see people galvanized or made angry or frustrated or fall in love when they're talking. They're sort of making love to each other with words. And it's really unique and powerful for me.
I will just kind of lay out my own kind of experience with Mr. Romero. I've seen about 3 of the 6 moral films, Claire's Knee, My Night with Maud, and I just recently learned that a film that was kind of drilled into us and as like an editing course that I took in college, the Bakery Girl of Monceau.
Really?
Because of the way that he employs perspective in it, and we can get there. I do think that that's one of his strengths, and I guess like if listeners are on the fence of kind of watching things that feel like eating your vegetables or whatever, that lame expression that gets trotted out with anything that like has Janus film in front of it, I do think that these films have a lot to chew on in terms of perspective alone. And obviously the talkiness of it, the kind of the rhythms of daily life aspect of these films is certainly unique and makes them worth ingesting. But I mean, I do think that the kind of what gets slept on with Romero is that he is actually a pretty visually rich director. It's just not as easy to quantify as say, a Truffaut tracking shot or whatever it is. And so I guess maybe that's part of the reason that he doesn't get brought up in the discussion as much with some of these guys. And then there was also the thing, I think that some of his Cahiers du Cinéma pals decided that he was a little bit too old school, or that he liked American films a bit too much. Apparently he liked Hitchcock a lot. And he liked the older French stuff as well. He liked Renoir. And I guess he was just talking about Jules and Jim a bit too much for the rest of his friends there. And eventually they kind of ousted him, saying they need to go in kind of like a more modern direction. But his films feel really distinct and modern to me. But maybe it's because of what you're saying, Bill. It's because of the influence he's had. So maybe we'll end there. But I guess let's kind of dive into Tale of Springtime. So where does this one stack up for you? Not to be as crude as to rank these things, because I feel like that would not be keeping in the spirit of which they're made. But how does this one stack up to you against the other tales of the season?
I think I like it the best, perhaps, or at least at the moment. I really enjoyed it. It was the first one I saw, and each one is such a unique, windy experience that takes you on its own journey of relationships, because that's what these films are about. They're about relationships and ideas about relationships. So, but yes, I'll choose A Tale of Springtime. I'm curious what you guys thought, if you saw any of the others, and whether you liked any of the others more than that.
Maybe it's because it was so new, so I'd seen Springtime before. I had seen Winter before. I hadn't seen Autumn and Summer. And I think that because the newness and kind of the geography porn of Summer, I may have, that may be my, I don't want to say my favorite, but I would say like I had the warmest reaction to it. Again, I mean, I just get so much out of, and this is a thing that just seems from movie one from Romero seems to be a staple of the I guess it would be a tracking shot from like a car window of like a landscape. And that movie is just so rich with that, and just so many brilliant seascapes, and the color palette which is so important to Romero, as he mentions a lot. I guess that was easier for me to grasp. I do like the low hanging fruit metaphors that I don't have to think too much about, and that one was front and center enough for me to kind of get it out of the way and enjoy it. But I also appreciate complexity. And so maybe on repeat viewings, that one might something might get lost a little bit in repeat viewings. Yeah, that one kind of left me with a warmer feeling, but maybe that's in keeping with the theme of it.
I've only seen two of them. So I saw Springtime, and then I saw Autumn. I found myself more on the Springtime end. I think that I just liked the through line of it. Autumn, I know it's not very plot driven, but some of the characters were definitely driving me crazy. And being more of a novice of kind of Eric Romero, it was a breath of fresh air to see how the filmmaking was done, and seeing how, I was telling Colin earlier, of just the approach of, there's no score, there's a lot of talking, it's very, like, I was telling him that it seemed like the actors were awkward, and then upon research, it's, he works with a lot of people that aren't usually actors. So there's like some refreshing angle of that, of, okay, it's kind of, you're getting more real in a weird way.
Without being over, not to cut you off, but I wouldn't describe it as like cinema verite though,
No, and I think one thing that I'm curious at, and this might be a dumb question, but I found myself not, as I'm watching these, and I'm definitely going to watch the other two, but part of my interest in the four films was my favoritism of a particular season. So I knew that Autumn was the most acclaimed, I guess. That's why I wanted to watch that outside of Springtime. But I definitely was like, I kind of want to watch Winter, because I like Winter's my favorite season. I also didn't know if there was an order to these things. So I'm curious about your thoughts of, like, does that fall into anything when you're taking on these four seasons or not?
That's actually a good question for you, Bill, because do the seasons actually even thematically come into play, do you feel like, with these films, or do you feel like that they're just a kind of a backdrop?
I think they do. Let's take a look at Springtime, for instance, where you have an older man who has younger lovers in the movie, right? Like he is dating somebody his daughter's age. His daughter is dating somebody his age. And then there's this woman who's sort of in the middle who comes in. She shows some interest in the father and vice versa. And it seems like he might be going from one younger lover to another. So I don't know. I think that there's at least a very superficial
I definitely think springtime for me felt very like the metaphor of the season was there stronger than autumn, because springtime, I associate springtime to flowers bloom, everything blooms, everything's really pretty, and then it goes away really quickly. You're kind of entranced by the beauty of these things, and it kind of sets you in a different mood, and then you kind of come back to reality. In my opinion, that's what it seemed like, all the interests of like the older man being smitten by this girl, or the younger woman being smitten by people that are older than her, and then it kind of just, everybody goes back to like the lead, Xion goes back to her boyfriend because she realizes that that's like the person that she wants to be with.
I would say that autumn also is part of at least a motif, because the main character is an older woman. She's not terribly old, so she's not in, say, I guess maybe
her autumn years.
Yeah, but she is in her 40s at least, 50s maybe. So that's also about older love at an older age. So it does apply, I think.
There's an emphasis on wine and aging, and
that too. I was literally about to talk about that too. Yes, the wine and the grape aging and changing as it ages. So yeah.
When you have the competing efforts from the younger woman and the older woman on how to set up their friends. There's a lot of naivety and ambition with the younger one, and then the older one kind of has a little bit more precision or kind of control of what she's doing, but there's there's a difference of age.
Right.
That gets played with.
Well, so going back to springtime, I feel like this is a thing that comes up a lot in Romero's films, and it does send up a little bit of a red flag. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of older gentlemen courting quite younger women.
Bond villain-esque men courting
younger women.
And this makes me wonder if that's the way it is now in France, or if that was the way it was then, even, or if this is just a Romero thing.
That's, and I guess that's kind of what I wanted to ask you, because I don't know if it's my own American mores that, I was telling Matt before we started recording, I feel like part of what I glean from these films is just what it must be like to live in a society where where the government sort of tries to take care of you, because it's like these are movies that just are patently French, because you can work at, say, like a gas station in one of these films and still have 3 months of downtime.
Nobody's working in these films. Everybody's either like when they're at their workplace, they're leaving, or they're just arriving.
That's actually purposeful. He never shows. He intentionally doesn't want to show work.
Okay.
So
that's good to know.
He's showing you the before and after. Yeah.
But there's a cultural nuance there that I have to try to kind of remember every time I'm watching these movies.
I think all the interconnections and all the kind of back and forth, or all these stories, if it was an American filmmaker, would probably take place in the workplace. Whereas I think the European culture is more not work centric, and these experiences are happening outside of work.
Yeah, well, there's also settings. There's less of a cultural stigma of sort of promiscuity and the ever important love triangle, which resurfaces in virtually every Romero film. And I'm sorry if we're kind of forking down a bunch of garden paths. There's a lot to talk about with these. Speaking of gardens, no, but I feel like a thing about, I guess, a motif or a pattern that I've noticed with Romero's films that I both appreciate, but that also can become a bit daunting, is this kind of idea of your first intuition being the correct one. Does that kind of ring true in any way? Like, I kind of feel like whatever the, I don't want to call them protagonists, because I feel like that's kind of making it, simplifying it a little bit too much. But I feel like our main characters generally come in with like some kind of a moral or goal or objective or state of being. In the case of Summer, for instance, there's a young man who comes into this town prepared to kind of ride or die, as it were, with this girl that he's decided is the object of his affections.
Right.
But before any of that, he states very clearly, well, mainly I'm a person that needs to be alone, and I'm going to be rejected by everybody, and it's not going to work out for me. And it kind of like that's where we end up at the end of the film. And I kind of feel like it's the same way with Springtime. Jean decides that she has these spaces that she's comfortable in, and despite the very aggressive attempts of the people around her to kind of pull her in a different direction, by the end of the film, she's kind of right back where she ultimately decided was her comfortable place. Her flat, by herself. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's always the case? Is this like a reliable formula for Romare?
I think there's some truth in that. Definitely with the springtime where Jean is leaving her, like the first thing we see is her leaving the Lycée the Jacques Brel College, I guess.
Oh.
And she goes to her boyfriend. Oh no, where does she go? She goes to her boyfriend's place first. Mm-hmm. And it is a mess. And you have this pan across, like where you just have like books stacked and there's a thing of bread on the table next to it. And then there's just...
Which, who among us, frankly? But
No. Like, he's a guy. And so she clearly feels uncomfortable there. She starts to tidy up and then she leaves and she goes to her place. But her cousin's lover is there, and then her cousin arrives, and so the cousin wants to stay there a little longer, so she has to leave there. So then we set upon, the adventure of she goes to a party and meets the other character, which is Natasha. Mm-hmm. Yes. Do they end up where they were? Yes. At the same time, I feel like they're changed by the experience in some way, and therefore that things could change. I don't know. I think some people might feel that at the end of the film, spoilers from this 34-year-old film, that the father and Jean might not ever see each other again. But I kind of feel like it's possible.
Right.
And it feels like Natasha and Jean are still friends. So things could happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but there is no grand arc that says this person is forever changed. It seems like Romare is less interested in that American narrative trope of this character goes through this and they change.
Closure. There's no closure per se. They're changed in the moment, but you don't know if that change is going to keep going,
right?
Or if that's going to last.
And it's not a change that is the building blew up, or it's the changes in increments, which is what life is like.
Right. Mm-hmm. The word that kept popping into my mind as I was watching these films was like mindfulness. Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially, like that's the joy that I get out of them. And I have my quibbles with them, but the joy of them for me is the sense of mindfulness that they instill. And frankly, that is a thing that is, I think, lost on American audiences. And you mentioned some of the influences that Romare has had on American filmmakers, and we can get into those maybe towards the end of our discussion. But I think that even there, with the kind of the more, I guess, talky feature directors, I don't get the sense that those are necessarily mindful films per se. They can be, but like I feel like if they really wanted to distill these things down to their essence, it's rhythms of life, mindfulness interspliced with a bit of philosophy. And actually, for me with Romare, the philosophy is the weakest part of the filmmaking. And obviously this is not Romare interjecting his own personal beliefs necessarily, but I do find, for instance, you're watching My Night at Maud's, hearing them, wax philosophic about Pascal's wager for 30 minutes. To me, it's almost like a distraction. And you mentioned, Vivaldi being kind of an influence for these. I feel like those subtle influences are more important to me than them outspokenly going into their philosophical diatribe.
It was interesting and again, I just watched Springtime and Autumn, but for movies that have to do with relationships and love and sexual desire and all this stuff, there's not much physical love or there's no sex scenes. There's nothing. It's just they barely kiss. They just talk.
You have a whole winter's worth of sexuals in front of you, brother.
But my question was, I'm curious if his other films are like that, or if this is just his stance of they kind of wax poetic about it and talk about the philosophy of love, but films don't actually show physical love.
I would hardly call them chaste. No, there are acts of physical love. I mean, obviously,
again, I've only seen those two, so I was just curious if it's
they're not
throughout his filmography.
There's no film where they're spraying volleys of ejaculate at each other.
That's not.
Not that I know.
I need to find a film that does that. Okay,
I got an internet's worth of research for you to do.
Yes, but do they have dialogue like the Romare films?
That's
the question.
That'd be a new niche.
That would be.
Just waxing poetic.
Right, they're talking about Pascal's wager. Well,
God, can you imagine? We will win. We will sweep the AVNs this year. But no, so, talking about like kind of dropping your American societal mores, I will say that's one thing that I latched onto right away about Tale of Springtime. So as you mentioned, Bill, Jean comes from the lycée. She goes to her boyfriend's house, reflects on what a mess it is. So we can imagine maybe she's not doing any reflecting. But from there, she goes to her.
Everybody's reflecting in these movies.
That's true. There's nothing but reflection. But she goes to her own flat. Somebody that she knows has agreed to let them stay there for as long as they need to. Mm-hmm. That was a thing that I latched onto right away, though. So, we next find ourselves in a party with Jean and Natasha, and they're not having a great time. They don't know anybody there. They're kind of wallflowering there. Mm-hmm. They decide to leave the party together, and just how organically Natasha offers up her own residence.
That doesn't happen to you into the greater LA area? All the time?
Definitely never in LA. But that is a super European thing, but definitely a French thing. I mean,
they call each other best friends by the end of the film.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, listen,
they just met like 3 weeks before.
There are relationships that bud over the course of an hour or two where love is being professed in Romère's films. I mean, but again, that's where I feel like I kind of have to check my impulses at the door. But that was one that I definitely recognized. We've had a number of kind of French off relatives in our life. And by the way, it works both ways, but there's never been a bit of shyness about somebody's second cousin, thrice removed, who you've met, maybe never. If they're going to vacation here in California, they are going to stay in your living room, and vice versa. If you're going over to France and you don't call on them, they think it's kind of strange. So, but that was one thing where I could think, I was like, well, okay, if I'm an American audience, not primed with this culture at all, I might see that and go, oh, this is out of place. But
I love that you have that insight, because I was wondering if that was just, convenient to the script. So it sounds like that is a French quality, a cultural thing, a difference.
I mean, I could be wrong about that. And obviously we are in a different world from when they made these films. And this was 1990?
Yeah, it came out in 90. So I think they shot it in 89.
Right. So, I mean, 35 years ago, obviously the world has changed quite a bit since then, but I do get the sense that it is still kind of the norm. Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't know who you are. You look like you're in need. I've got a couch. You can sleep in my mother's bed.
Yeah, and that also, I mean, they have that also feels like it's the personality of Natasha. Mm-hmm. That she is very warm, very trusting, and to some degree naive. She's the actress was around 20 years old who was playing her, so I would guess that was the age she's supposed to be roughly in the film.
Florence Darrell.
There you go. Wait, no, is it? Yes,
so.
You're right.
Okay,
good memory. And Florence, who I've fallen in love with both of these women when I watched this film. Her and Anne Teixeira. Teixeira. I'm not sure how you say that name. Forgive me for murdering any French words or names during this.
Now you actually have the French background here, so this is unforgivable.
I have some blood, but I have not yet been to France.
Okay,
and that needs to change. So what was my point? That to some degree, this may also be Natasha. That she herself is just a very generous, naive person.
But there is also in me, and this is in every Romère film, there is always a point with some of our characters where I kind of go, I need you to snap back to reality. But again, I don't want to hang that on Romère. I mean, I feel like that's part of like this might be way too heavy-handed to describe it this way, but the indoctrination of wearing American films and American storytelling that, I wonder if there's like an impatience that I have with some of these characters where I'm not willing to let you be a hangdog character who just can't figure out whether he's ready for love, or I'm not ready for you to decide if you prefer an older man to a younger man, or you want to say yes to this man or not. But again, maybe that's a part of the moral quandary that he wants to present you with, or whether that's my American impulses going like, just make a decision. Things need to move.
I think it's more of the latter, for sure.
Maybe.
And I think I felt my own angst at some scenes being like, okay, I get where you're getting at, but like get on with it. But there is also a sense of, there is a beauty of how the scenes unfold and how they discuss these things. They reveal, or they say the things that you almost are like, I wish I would say that in this scene or in this predicament, and they do. And I think it's the internal battle. I had that too, where I'm like, I want it to move faster, but I also appreciate how it's unfolding.
But but it wasn't necessarily a pacing thing for me, because like I was happy to listen to them have these scenes and have these arguments. But there were times where I thought, like, well, I want them to make a decision. I want them to have conviction. But that's not, as you know, Bill made the point, that's not how life works. So, you know, I think maybe if there's a barrier to entry for Romer, part of it might be that these films do make you kind of sit with your interior monologue, I guess, or expose the things that you aren't made to contemplate. In American films, you're not really given a chance to kind of explore this territory.
I was watching an interview with Romer, and he said when he was talking about certain story ideas, they would often begin with something like, what if this type of person meets this type of person? And what's going to happen? There are these contrasts of the kinds of people, and I think it's something that Romer does exceptionally well. And it doesn't always lead, it's a frustrating experience because life is frustrating, because people are frustrating. And he's not going to make the character develop in a way that's artificial in order to have a kind of grand arc or change. He's going to follow the glacier, and it's, I guess.
There's not going to be a big twist or a big reveal about a character.
He doesn't want to put a fine narrative bow on things. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's like there is a discomfort there, but there's also a joy in it for me. But so moving through springtime, Jean gets the opportunity to stay with Natasha, who's offered up her childhood apartment.
She offers up her father's room. Her father's never there because her father is staying with his lover.
Right.
But shocker, he shows up.
Well, so obviously,
big twist.
Yeah, right.
For Romer, that's like, whoa, wait.
That's his M. Night Shyamalan twist.
Slow down.
Huge upset.
Slow down.
No, but so, and that's all part of the machinations of Natasha. So Natasha has taken a serious issue with Eve, who is the girlfriend or the mistress.
He's a girlfriend, yeah.
And Natasha does not take kindly to her, although it sounds like she hasn't taken kindly to any of these poor ladies. But there is obviously an ulterior motive that Natasha has. Can you describe what that is?
The ulterior motive? Well, I'm not sure.
Maybe you wouldn't characterize it that way.
I'm not sure I would characterize it that way.
Okay.
So one would think that the ulterior motive, by watching the film, and following the looks and glances and what is done, as Natasha is trying to set up Jean with her father. But is that the case? Or, as she says at the very end, and she says it very genuinely, and she's crying when she says it, I didn't do that. I was just naive. And, why do you think that you're being paranoid? Now, I guess also Romer's films are famous for the characters saying one thing and doing another.
Okay, yeah.
So I think it's actually open to interpretation. But my interpretation of that is that she's being genuine. I might be wrong, but that's how I like to look at it.
You mean that she's being genuine by the end of the film when she's saying that I was naive?
I wasn't trying to set you up with my father. It just worked out that way when I went off with my boyfriend. We're having problems, yada, yada, yada. Now, maybe I'm being extremely naive, but I believed her.
I'd be dubious if she didn't have at least the hope that Jean being there didn't throw some kind of a wrench into the cogworks of his relationship with Eve, because she clearly despises Eve, no matter what her intentions between Jean and her father are. It is clear that she definitely wants to, I don't want to say sabotage the father's relationship with Eve, because that feels a bit too conventional. I think that's simpler than that. But I do think that there's a real joy that Natasha has in just spending time with Jean that is genuine and real.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to another Romerian. Can I say Romerian? That feels wrong, but I like it.
Romeriest?
What? No, wow. What is happening?
Can we say something about Romer's name?
Yes.
We didn't say. So it was something I was going to bring up earlier, and then I just didn't. But
got derailed on this show, Bill? I can't believe it.
It's a pseudonym, guys. Eric Romer is not his real name. His real name, apparently, is Jean-Marie Maurice Scherer.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Or Maurice Henri Joseph Scherer. I don't know why there would be any question. He was born in 1920. And one of the things that Romer did, aside from take a pseudonym, is he would constantly lie about his age when he was born, when he was giving interviews.
Who among us?
I love that. And and Erich Romer, the name comes from two people that he liked. One is Erich von Stroheim, who's a wonderful early director in the silent films rather. Romer is from Sax Romer, who was an author who wrote something called the Fu Manchu series, which I haven't read, but apparently a popular, I think more like a kind of popular
Serial.
Yeah, serialized.
Something tells me they probably haven't aged very well.
Yeah. Just from the name, I'm like,
No, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Well, okay, thank you. Also, now, can you lay that full name on us one more time?
I can read it.
Back to front.
Jean-Marie Maurice Scherer.
Wow. That was beautiful.
I would just kept that.
Thank you.
Can I go 80s?
Yeah. Ooh. DJ Jazzy Romer.
I like the little bump at the end.
Pew! Oh, I just heard another JC Penney opening. So, but ultimately, we end up at a point where all four of our leads, I'd say there's four true leads, are in the same space together. I guess it's their country home, which, again, just is very French. Just everybody just has that as the luxury of a
right.
They've got their
homes
side
that
flat.
no one ever goes to. That's how they always say it.
I'm so jealous
of
of
my country home. We never go there.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! I look at their apartments and I look at our apartments in LA, and I'm just like, what are we doing?
Well, that's the other thing, and that's part of what I was saying to about the gas station attendant who can also like spend 4 months in Montpellier or whatever, because like there is just a different reality that these characters exist in, and it's not like necessarily bourgeois for like somebody to have. Yeah, we've got our chalet, and then we've got our country home, and then we've got 2 flats in Paris.
And we never go to any of them.
We don't ever go. In fact, they're open. Take your whole family there. Live there for 3 years if you need to, and then we'll be in and out occasionally. But at a certain point, our 4 leads end up in this country home together, and that's where a lot of the visual motifs of spring come into play. I mean, there's literally a blooming garden. Now,
yes,
obviously, we don't want to really read these things too literally.
Well, and not to pivot real quickly, but like the beginning scenes where she goes to the boyfriend's apartment, then she goes to her flat. There's a huge gap, visually between those two.
You're right, and
her apartment has the flowers.
Yes,
they actually take a point to like show you her looking across the flowers, which I thought was.
And his is very doom and gloom and like just unsettling.
And that's another thing. Just to your point, Colin, he is a visual director, but his visuals are very simple. His editing is very simple.
Right.
His cinematography is very simple, but it is thoughtful. It is precise. It's like it is intentional.
It's what Clint Eastwood would hope he would do on his timelines.
Now I have to assume that
I need to watch Clint Eastwood watching a Romero film. Yeah. That's what I need to do.
Well, so I mentioned his Eric Romero's short, which is it's a 30-minute short. God, no, I'm.
Is it Bakery Girl of Marceau?
You went to film school, didn't you?
The Bakery Girl of Marceau. I'm checking it out, just making sure. What is the name? Give me the name of the bakery.
This makes me so happy.
Oh, Bakery Girl of Marceau.
This makes me so happy.
Woo! Sorry. Look, I'm a whiskey and a half in, Bill.
Please do that more often.
We're already on the path.
Auto-tune has come out.
please auto-tune up the Romero discussion anytime.
Bill's glee for this auto-tune is going to drop real quickly.
So good.
So around the time
at this pace, Disney Bot might come back out.
Disney Bot. Around the time that John F. Kennedy was getting assassinated, Eric,
R.I.P.
Yeah, here's to a real one. Eric Romer was making a short film, The Bakery Girl of Monceau. And so in keeping with what you were talking about, a perspective, part of what's so brilliant about that film is, so it's another love triangle. It's a short. A man falls in love with a girl he passes by on the street. Another kind of familiar motif of Romer's is our Don Juan's getting a glimpse of somebody and deciding that's the one for me. And they kind of make an agreement to kind of meet up later on. And she disappears. She's not on the street anymore from that period on. He keeps on walking the same route, the same time of day. And we get these different perspectives of him making this journey. And eventually he meets another woman in a bakery, hence the titular character name. Each shot was deliberately a perspective from one of the 3 leads. And we have these great high angle shots because eventually at the end of this, spoiler for this 30-minute French New Wave short, we just discovered that the woman who he'd fallen in love with in the street broke her leg and had an apartment that was overlooking the route that he walks every day. And some of these high angle shots that we've been seeing, they were from her perspective, but they weren't framed in the traditional through the window lens. So I do think there is like a bit of more of a meticulous camera work that does a lot of storytelling that we may not consider on the face of things. So that was my long way around of saying, the shot of the flowers in springtime. No, but I think that's the strength of these movies is perspective. It's also the way that we hold on certain moments. So, Natasha decides to play a classical piece. I don't recall the composer at the moment, but
it's driving me crazy. It's like on the tip of my tongue.
Well, I know that they play a recording of her playing Schumann. I don't know if Schumann is what she's playing on the piano live when she's with Jean.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
They hold on that recital in all of its glory, and that's another kind of Romerism. You hold on those moments. If our main characters are going to a recital or a concert, we're going to hear the first 10 minutes of that. If they're going to...
God forbid they show the characters going to a movie and then you're just sitting with a shot of the movie theater for 2 hours.
Well, they do. And now I'm forgetting the film, but there's a film where maybe it was one of the season's films. They go to see Hamlet at a certain point.
Yes, that's one of the
all of Hamlet.
Films.
Is that winter? Maybe
it's
I can't remember.
Yes, there's a good amount of Hamlet.
Yeah, there's a very good. Yeah, well, or no, maybe it's a Winter's Tale.
Yes, you're right. Of course, that's because it's a Winter's Tale.
Okay,
yes.
So yes, and there's they want you to see that whole. Well, I mean, I have to assume it's deliberate, right? But and it's living in those moments. And yes, okay, now it's all coming back.
A Winter's Tale was inspired by A Winter's Tale, I think.
Oh, was it?
Okay.
Yeah. See, this is why you need to get yourself a sweet old Zoom V3.
Incoming.
Actually, we had one. It's going to be here today. God damn it.
What happened?
I want to provide everyone with the opportunity to be an idiot with the vocals on the show. Yes.
I just broke out into Celine Dion, and he's mad that it's not going to be auto-tuned.
Yeah, I was mad that he didn't auto-tune his Celine Dion. He just broke into. Okay, we digress. Okay, so
the whole movie is a digression.
That's true. No, this is very meta. In A Tale of Springtime, our 4 leads find themselves together.
Yes. So we have Natasha, the daughter. We have Igor, the father. We have the father's lover, Eve, or girlfriend. And then we have Jean, who's sort of this third wheel. Igor, he says he's going to go to the country house. Yeah. The daughter says he's not going to go to the country house for some reason. Jean and Natasha go, and of course he's there, and Eve is there. So they're all kind of there together. They start talking about, should we leave? Should we go? No, everybody stay. Then Eve and Natasha get into a fight. This is really exciting, guys.
It is exciting.
I think Eve is peeling potatoes with a cigarette between her fingers.
Yes, she sure is.
And that just sets Natasha off.
One of the ashes gets on
the potato. Yeah. And Eve says, oh, of course, when I say that this won't happen, it happens to me.
But there is also a bone of contention that Natasha had, a serious bone.
Yes.
Don't look at me like that.
I was going to say something, but I'm not going to.
What is there's a deep suspicion that Natasha has of old Eve.
There is a necklace involved.
Old young Eve.
Oh my God. Yes, that's true of young Eve. Actually, what is the age gap there? And then that's made, there's a bit of wind about that in the film.
I think, because they both talk about taking this philosophy exam on which Natasha did better, but Eve is the philosophy student. Right. Like that's her major. So they're around the same age. They must be around 20, 21, 22.
Which Igor, buddy. Oof. Okay.
Well, but he's plotting to kill James Bond. So
off mic, Matt suggested that Igor, played by a gentleman, Hugh Quester. Oh, wow.
Oog.
He looks like
I have a French friend named Oog.
Ooh, I love it.
And it's Oog.
I love it. Okay. Oog Quester.
He looks like a Bond villain.
Yes.
Okay. I will say this.
Why not?
He's not the sex pot that they position him as. That being said, Bond villain might be a bit strong. You know what?
That was the thing. He walked in with his oversized suit and briefcase.
Yeah, he's a bit awkward.
Jean was like,
Certainly.
"Ooh,"
I will say this.
What, him? Like that's what you're infatuated with.
Did you think that? Oh, this is great. This is the kind of thing I want to talk about. So when the father walked in and Jean comes out in the towel, you thought she was looking at him like, "Hey there."
I think that's what the presumption is that like, oh, this is like kind of not a meet cute, but kind of like a happen chance that they get to see each other and there's some intrigue. And I was like, him? Like this guy?
Okay, but you didn't necessarily think that Jean was immediately thinking about this guy as a romantic possibility.
I think there was a small twinge of it, or as the audience, you're supposed to think that there's some intrigue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a hint of it, certainly. I mean, and well, first of all, back to your first point. I do think that this guy, Oog, he does look, how would I describe him? It's as if Flea, Christoph Waltz, and Crispin Glover all got in this fly telepod together.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then there's also like a carp in there with big lips.
And my point, my point is, would that
Did you say a carp?
Yeah, like a fish.
Is that somebody you would cast as a romantic interest? And I get the point of this is that like,
and actually the reality of it, that it's believable enough that they are in this scenario.
You're saying he has Riz.
I would not say that.
What's Riz, guys? I'm sorry.
It's what the children.
It's what the children say. Charisma.
So we have as you know, we have a long-standing tradition on the show of trying to hang with the chidlins.
Yes.
And if you're rizzed
I
up,
used Riz in Scrabble last night. By the way,
you can't use.
It's a word.
In that case, is it R-I-Z or R-I-S?
It's R-I-Z.
Okay,
but that doesn't make any sense because charisma doesn't have a Z anywhere near that.
But I looked it up, and it is a Scrabble word.
Fuck that. Okay, so anyway,
I still got pummeled by my wife.
Yeah. Oog is presented as a potential suitor for Jean. I do feel like they kind of point towards that, especially in their initial meeting. But eventually we do end up in a position where Oog and Anne, or Jean and Igor, are together alone. And they get to have a frank discussion about some of these things that the film is set up for us. And to what you guys are saying is I think that is a very strong scene. But why does that scene work so well for you? I mean, you were kind of alluding towards like the blocking of it, but like what really makes that scene work for you, Bill?
So when Jean and Igor are left alone at the country house, they talk about Natasha, why she's acting the way she is, why she fought with Eve. There's a necklace that went missing and Natasha suspects that Eve stole it. They also talk about it with respect to Natasha, maybe there was some plan for Igor to be around with Jean so that they might kindle some kind of romantic relationship.
Right.
And then, Igor makes some moves. Igor? Let's say Igor.
I'm going to say Igor for the sake of the French.
Igor sounds worse to me.
I mean, he definitely, I will say this. If there was a guy that looks like an Igor.
You guys are hard on this guy.
I'm just being mean.
I think he's not.
I told you we're a mean-spirited show.
We're to the end of we're almost to the end of segment one. We're starting to get more.
Yeah, we're starting to punch down.
Yeah.
No, but so I felt like there was just like a really genuine streak throughout that whole thing, especially performance-wise. And I don't know if Jean and Igor have gone on to have celebrated French film careers after this. But if they are as amateur as many of
he only did one more film after this.
Gotta see more Oog. If they didn't, I'm very surprised because this is where, and maybe this is just a credit to Eric. Can I call him Eric?
Why not?
This is just, I think maybe it's just a credit to him is their performance feels very kind of stirring in an interesting way. And if you can call these films thematically rich, it's in moments like these.
I think you said something really intelligent about Romer earlier that
we don't track an intelligence on the show, Bill.
that there is a kind of mindfulness and a presence to the characters in his stories, and that definitely tracks through the Six Moral Tales, and certainly some more than others, but especially I would say also in these four tales of the seasons. And they even talk about it. There's even a moment where two characters talk about the other one not listening, not being present.
Okay.
So Romer is trying to put the audience very much in the present with his characters. The characters are trying to be present with each other. Matt was talking about the music. He only does, I believe the term is diegetic music, whether it's 10 minutes of somebody playing a piano or they're listening to a recording. Yeah. And he wants the dialogue to be absolutely audible. He is not Robert Altman. And so all of these things are intentional to be completely engaged with the audience and the characters to be engaged with each other, where they're trying to figure out essentially, what are we doing here and how can we get along?
If there is a distinction between those 6 films and these 4, maybe it's that these films are much less likely to break into a 20-minute diatribe about the schism between Catholicism and you know, I think that those films are more pointedly, quote unquote, philosophical. There's a sense of steeping in an environment and a season and a situation that maybe doesn't come across in some of those other older Rohmer films.
Can I agree and disagree?
Yes, please.
Yes, I think that maybe he is being a little more subtle with his philosophy, but it is absolutely present.
Yeah.
Even down to when the movie starts, Jean, goes to a bookshelf in her boyfriend's place and reaches for Critique de la raison pure by Kant, which I guess translates to something like...
It's very specific that she grabs that one, too.
Yeah, because they talk about transcendentalism, they talk about Kantian philosophy.
Yeah, and I don't mean to suggest that there's no philosophy.
It's just not as blatantly laid out, maybe.
Right. And it makes me wonder if this is actually just if this is actually just a societal thing where philosophy is just more openly talked about and respected in France.
I think maybe some of that, but I think absolutely it's Rohmer. I think that this is part of his voice. Rohmer was a very literary man. He was very learned in various things, history, philosophy, literature. And he brought a lot of that into his films. His films perhaps are more influenced by literature than they are by other movies.
Right.
Whereas if you look at Truffaut or Godard, Godard, it's arguable both ways, I guess. But like Truffaut definitely feels a bit more cinematic, definitely drawing on earlier cinematic influences.
Right.
I enjoy Springtime and the other tales because it's Rohmer exploring relationships in a very overt way and using philosophy to do so, using history sometimes, and it's completely identifiable and it's absolutely salient for me when I watch them. I feel what these people are feeling, and their reactions feel natural even when they're frustrating or maddening.
Is there ever a moment, not to cut you off, but is there ever a moment where you do break with these characters and you do feel like the artifice creep in?
You mean that the character doesn't do what that character would do, that sort of thing?
Or doesn't behave the way a real person would behave? Because I feel like there are moments like that for me. And again, they don't trump the joy of these films. I think that like these films should be celebrated for the reasons that you're saying. But I do think there are moments where I think to myself, this is not how a real person behaves. But again, I don't know.
I think in the dialogue, I think just the way they speak to each other, oftentimes we don't normally speak in a philosophical manner.
Sure.
So it's stylized in that sense.
Okay.
But I think at a certain point, I just get lost in Rohmer's world, and then I just am totally sucked in by the characters. And as far as influences, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on all this too, please, more thoughts. But I see a clear link between Linklater, which is why I was talking about Link, and then also Whit Stillman and Woody Allen and basically American directors that came later who rely heavily on philosophical dialogue that draws on literature and history, even though the focus can often be different.
Now, with Linklater, do you just go back to the before films with that?
No. Right back to Slacker.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, I'm not saying that that's the only influence. I'm just saying it's clear to me, and I think I've read him talk about Rohmer, and it's just clear to me that he's a lover of the aesthetic.
I think there was a lot of, like, without the quirkiness, there was a lot of Alexander Payne. There was was even Wes Anderson in some of his films.
Absolutely, Wes Anderson, yes.
And Call Me By Your Name.
Yeah, Luca Guadagnino is one that came to mind for me for sure.
Okay.
And I also kind of thought, maybe because he tracks in genre a little bit too much, this wouldn't fit, but how do you feel like Jim Jarmusch stacks up to any of this?
Oh, that's really interesting.
Like, I think of like a film like Only Lovers Left Alive, and obviously genre film, but those are kind of like aimless films where they're discussing their internal strife.
Right. And sometimes there are literary references or philosophical ideas. I think there's definitely a connection there. I don't know how much Jarmusch appreciates Rohmer, but what's interesting too is that Jarmusch absolutely may be more influenced by literature than a lot of other directors.
Right.
And Romer is absolutely influenced by through and through by philosophy, history, and literature. So that may be also a reason why they do some similar things in their films.
But yeah, I liked that comparison, Matt. I think Call Me by Your Name feels like it has a lot of this in it, even down to the kind of contrivances of their love triangle or potential their aptitude to talk about their romantic life in kind of more heady and intellectual ways.
Even the ending too, like Bill was mentioning, it's not when you finish that film, you don't know that they're never going to cross paths again. Like there could be an opening there, at least when I watched it.
Absolutely.
And they've changed in the moment, but Chalamet's character is super young, but he has a lot of growth to come through. And so you don't know what he's going to pull from this experience or how it's going to change him. You just know it's going to. And so I feel like that's very similar to the Romer films that I've seen, is that they're changed in the moment, but you don't know how it's going to shape them for the rest of their life.
Right.
I guess that's where I would maybe want to leave it is I think people hear our silly little show and they probably go like, our interests are not going to link with these series of films that are cut above the kind of schlock that we tend to talk about in these. But I think I'm grateful for having revisited some of these films, because honestly, they are kind of a breath of fresh air. They are kind of a palate cleanser. Not to say they're simple. I mean, they are intellectually rich. They're thematically rich. There's an economy of filmmaking that's just different. But also, to what we're talking about here, I feel like I'm going to be looking for this influence in a lot of these films, in a lot of the films that we more regularly ingest. I don't know. I was happy to go down this road. And before we leave this subject, can we talk about Natasha's Canadian tuxedo?
So, well, we were talking about this before. There's a lot of acid wash jeans. There's a lot of tucked in
It's
stuff.
1989, guys.
A lot of it.
It's France.
Things were denim. Things were
France.
even in America. If you look back at what is it called? Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
Look at the denim. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, you guys need to watch Heavy Metal Parking Lot. It's only like 16 minutes. But it is this documentary about a Judas Priest show, and all the documentarians do is hang out with the crowd outside the Judas Priest show. Any people from like 13 to like 30 or something. And it is hilarious.
Okay.
Their hair, their denim is amazing.
Well, but see, Natasha, like almost, and she was like a little bit, if she had just a little bit less party up front, she probably would have been right at home with these folks. Am I wrong? I mean, like all she needed was like a pack of like menthols and like those bleached white Nikes with like the tall socks and everything.
Metallica t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. An awkwardly placed scrunchie. No, I was very impressed by the Canadian tuxedo. That's all. Our lead protagonist in Tales of Summer was wearing a fanny pack for a lot of that film. It's really unfortunate. And by the way, with Bond villains, there are a few Bond villains in the series. It's not just Igor. In Tales of Winter, the gentleman that our lead heroine initially moves to a different city for.
Okay, Bond villain.
He's kind of Bond villain-y.
Yes. Well, in Autumn, the guy with the slick back hair, the wine guy, he's Bond villainish.
He's Bond villain.
I feel like the main guy in Tale of Summer could be in a Jim Jarmusch movie. The curly-haired guy.
Yes.
He feels like he could just mope around a Jim Jarmusch movie really well.
Yeah, he looks like he's definitely been listening to like Nick Cave's entire discography for like. And you're right,
and
Bill.
Grinder
like,
like, Man too, like obscure Nick Cave.
That's right.
Yeah,
birthday party. But like, my inclination is just like you want to talk about these films. I mean, that's kind of what's beautiful about them. Is there's a lot to talk about. They're super rich.
Yes.
So in lieu of doing that and making this show 3 hours long,
yes,
I'll say I think that we can all endorse checking them out, even if they might not sound like your cup of tea, even if you don't want something that's a bit meditative, just give it a shot and see what it does to your mood. That would be where I would leave it. Where would you leave it, Mr. Frank?
I think it's definitely a refreshing pivot. And if you're a fan of watching movies and a fan of exploring different genres or different eras, this is one that you should not overlook and you should definitely dive into. And even if it does feel like eating your vegetables at times, it's still rewarding, and it's rewarding in a different way that you don't experience now. I feel like
I'm with you guys. I think that Romer is sometimes underappreciated as one of the new waivers, and I'm not talking about Flock of Seagulls. And I think that he is absolutely accessible to anybody because you can go in not knowing anything about Kant or Pascal's, what was it?
Pascal's Wager, which is bullshit, by the way.
Pascal's Wager, and still very much appreciate the relations between the characters and identify with them. And, you know, it's not like watching paint dry, which is a famous character piece of dialogue from Night Moves. I don't know if you guys know that. The Gene Hackman movie. He says, oh, watching a Romero film is like watching paint dry or something. It's not true. I think absolutely it's engaging. And, you know, especially if you like things like Linklater or Stillman or Woody Allen stuff. Mm-hmm.
All right. New wave it up, guys. Romero, so... oh... Shit. I tried. Segment dos. Segment deux.
Mon Dieu.
Segment deux is the segment where we take a look at the media landscape, be it social or otherwise, try to figure out just what the fuck you weird people are talking about. And there's something that's captured.
You were going to say casual, and then you said captured?
There's something that casual the captured zeitgeist lately on the X spheres.
It's a clean echo.
Yeah, it's good. Good stuff. You don't always have to be in the cave when you're talking about X, even though it helps because fuck you. There's a sentiment that's going around. It's captured the attention of film Twitter, which, by the way, I don't want to go off a too aggressive a side note. I just want to know how you feel about this. You can shut this down right away, Bill.
Why?
There's a creature feature that you worked on early in your career that you edited.
Uh-huh.
And apparently it had something to do with the creation of film Twitter. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I mean, I know that it blew up.
Okay. Well, but, there's apparently, and I haven't done my due research, so I'm happy to cut this. But there's apparently that film is. Can I mention the film?
Yes, you can.
Now, Bill was the editor of Sharknado.
That's true.
And apparently, that film had something to do with the creation of film Twitter as we know it today.
I do remember it blowing up, like you said. It was everywhere when it came out.
Yes, and it did get picked up by several semi-celebrities and things like that on Twitter, like Damon Lindelof and people like that were just telling people to watch it or that it was crazy, and so then it got a lot more attention than it might have otherwise.
But so it was an enthusiastic. There was a celebration of it. It wasn't a derisive campaign.
I think it was a celebration of dumb and WTF. Like, just what is this? Where did it come from? Why does it exist?
Well, I think that's the impetus of that's basically what film Twitter does a lot.
Well,
it's like,
okay,
what is going on with so and so?
I think what film
in
Twitter
a good way,
does.
though.
Well, okay, but now you obviously have a front row view to this, but I think what film Twitter does is get the inside track on something vis-a-vis some film, I don't know, festival. So, they go to, what's the thing that they have in Austin every year?
South by Southwest.
So it's like they catch some midnight screening of something at South by Southwest, and because they have the inside track on it, they get to celebrate it for an additional 6 months while the rest of us kind of sit around and go, is Dave Eggers' Nosferatu that good, or is it just okay? And I think that's, I'm not saying that's what's going on with Sharknado, but I do wonder if like part of it was some people were on the inside track of it, and yeah, people like Lindelof picked it up and wanted to celebrate it. But anyway, Bill is known for much more sophisticated and interesting work. I just thought that was interesting that we're diving into a social media segment, and there's a direct correlation. Right. In fact, we could say, Bill, you and company are directly responsible for the state of social media today.
You're the grandfather of
if you
film
think
Twitter.
About it, if you really think about it,
wow,
you're responsible for January 6th. So
Thank you very much.
Just wanted our listeners to know this. We're sitting with the monster who started all this. So,
him and Elma.
Butterfly effect, y'all.
That's right. So there's a thing that is taken off on Twitter, and this gentleman, it's got thousands and thousands of likes, who we're not disagreeing with. So our policy can go out the window. We can say his name. A man who calls himself Depressed Bergman on Twitter, or X, says, name an underrated movie by a famous director. I'll begin. Paths of Glory, 1957. Director, Stanley Kubrick. Now, we're going to celebrate the spirit of this tweet. However, Depressed. Can I call you Depressed? DPB. Paths of Glory is perfectly celebrated. It's perfectly rated. Would you call Paths of Glory underrated?
I'd say it's definitely a part of the canon and one of Kubrick's most celebrated films.
I don't think it's underrated. So I do have to push back on you there, DPB.
But we talked about this a little bit beforehand, and I was kind of phrasing how I was taking this segment on of, if I'm just going to say Stanley Kubrick to you and name films that you think are great by his, where does Paths of Glory show up? Within the top 3?
Oh, I know. I can't rank Kubrick. We'd be all day.
But you could.
I'd say because of what it does. I'd say because of the performances in it. I'd say because of it's got so much of the impetus for what he's famous for. I'd put it in top 5.
Different question. If you're to recommend Kubrick films to somebody who's never watched Kubrick, would you recommend Paths of Glory first?
Oh, I don't know. It depends on the person. This is such a low. It's like you're asking me what my favorite band is. I don't. It depends.
Okay, I'm asking Bill.
Wait! Before you do, I'm bad at lists.
Yeah,
so here's the thing: I'm not very good at saying, do you have 5 favorite directors?
Exactly.
But
I'm not.
But if I came to you and I said, "What Kubrick film would you recommend?"
If you said,
I've never seen Kubrick.
If I knew Matt loved war films, I'd absolutely recommend Paths of Glory.
That's the thing. I mean, you got to gauge your. If I'm gauging the person I'm talking to, if I just have to give you an omnibus of Kubrick, I guess it probably wouldn't come up first, but I don't think that means it's underrated.
Yeah, we're talking underrated versus
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah.
I see the seeds of your brain. I see the little monkey clanking his cymbals together in there. I know what he's doing.
Unbelievable.
And you know what? It's okay.
I'm trying to help define.
I get it.
Underrated.
So for our purposes, what do we mean by underrated?
Yes.
For our purposes, lesser discussed. How about that? Should we agree on that?
Lesser discussed.
So lesser discussed films within
the filmography of said director.
So we brought up this tweet, but what this tweet has inspired in us, just as a fun little exercise, we thought, well, maybe, even though Depressed Bergman, DPB, you're wrong about this being an underrated Kubrick film. Whatever, that's okay. It's just a lapse in judgment. But I thought it would be a fun little exercise for us each to think about a well-known director. And well-known is also a vague term, but I think we'll know it. You know it when you hear it. So we're all going to come up with a well-known director and an underrated work of theirs that we feel is underrated and
or less talked about.
Yes.
Can I add one other thing to that?
Please.
What if we also include films that have been poorly received and that we believe are actually wonderful films?
Ooh,
I think that falls under the underrated.
I think that also, even miss.
If Colin loves Tom Hooper and thinks that Cats is underrated and not given the justice, he can say this.
Which I know that he's a fervent fan of from your previous
butthole cut for life. Butthole cut.
Did I just?
I don't know what is happening.
BHC for L.
Bill doesn't know about the butthole cut. Bill.
Oh yes, I did hear about the yes. Okay. Now it's coming back to me. I did hear about this.
I'm surprised somebody hasn't leaked that yet.
I haven't seen the film, but I did hear about them taking.
We drunkenly hate watched it when it came out.
And then our hate turned to love.
Well, we also had a friend that actually loved the film.
He had never heard the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it blew his mind.
When James Corden sang the music, he loved it.
And did you guys enjoy Swiftie in it, or?
Oh, I forgot she was in there.
What
is this character I'm doing that loves cats? It was like channeling Barry White.
No, that's more.
That's very wrong.
That's right. That's more nefarious than Barry White. Barry White's chipper. That's like an incel.
That's a Bond villain.
That's an incelish person that loves the butthole version of Cats.
No, you know who it is? It's
I'm Michael Wincott. You don't like Woodrow?
Describe yourself, Mike.
He's the guy in Strange Days and
I'm in
Vampires.
I'm in The Crow.
He's very tall. He has that terrible voice.
Yeah, he's got this voice.
I shouldn't have said that.
It's a little bit gravelly. No, he's great.
He's great.
He's in Count of Monte Cristo. Is it Talk Radio?
He might be.
Yeah,
I think he's in Vampires and he's in Strange Days.
Vampires. Oh, okay.
John Carpenter's Vampires.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I am in that film.
Yeah, I was going to say your tongue.
Sorry. Forget. My filmography is so. Oh, he's in Kiss the.
I'm in
Kiss the Spider. An Alex Cross film. Whatever.
Okay, we're here to talk about underrated films from a well-known director, Matthew.
Oh, you almost. I figured we'd start with our guest.
Frankus. No, I want you to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Let's get his creative juices flowing. Let's let him hear you fail upwards, and then he can come in and succeed
You're
downwards.
going to do great, Matt.
Thank you.
Yes.
you.
Don't know.
It's refreshing to have support.
Is Barry Wrong going to come back?
He might.
Very wrong will definitely come back. So I gave this some thought, and it kept going back to one film. And it's a recent director, but a director that has had enough of filmography through until the early 90s, late 80s. It's a Tim Burton film, and it's
Nobody knows of this man.
nobody has ever heard of Tim
Tim
Burton.
who?
Timmy Burton. Timmy Burt. It's Ed Wood.
Oh, well, okay, wait a minute.
Hold on. Nobody talks about Ed Wood.
You're gassing me, right?
No, nobody talks about Ed Wood.
That's my favorite Tim Burton film.
Matt.
I think
Ed Wood
believe
is
that,
very celebrated film.
but I don't think it is. Maybe with generations. Maybe I'm talking about with
Are you
with
saying recently?
well within the last. When did Alice in Wonderland come out? When did Dark Shadows come out? 10 years ago
Man,
almost.
you were just
What I'm saying is that nobody, when you bring up Tim Burton now, nobody goes to Ed Wood.
okay.
Ever.
So
People might go to Beetlejuice or Batman, but nobody goes to Ed Wood really.
I would agree that it's underappreciated, but
And I'm not going underrated. I'm going more the underappreciated route.
okay, I can say I guess I can agree that maybe it's disappearing from the zeitgeist a little bit. Like you don't hear it celebrated so much anymore. But don't you feel like that's partly because, and I want to be charitable to Mr. Burton, but that he's kind of desaturated his intellectual.
Well, yeah, I don't think
canon.
I don't think he's not to blame for what's happening. Or not to partially blame for it. But what I'm saying is that again, I took this concept and I didn't go the underrated part per se.
You're thinking about what people are talking about, right?
Yes, people don't think Tim Burton and go to Ed Wood, which I would argue, and I agree with Bill. It's probably his best work. It's probably his best movie that he's had in his filmography, and people that
It's up there certainly. I mean, I guess I would lean Pee Wee, but Ed Wood is so. I mean, it's just. It's not. They're not doing the same thing.
It's forgotten. It's nobody really talks about it unless
It's
you're
certainly
really
not forgotten, man.
It is though, and like I said, maybe we're talking about. I'm not trying to be pretentious, but we think about these things a little bit on a different level, and not to diminish the casual audience or moviegoer. But again, if you talk to Tim Burton with the layman, they're not going to go to Ed Wood.
I agree that it's not on the tip of most of a casual viewer's tongue. I don't want to say you're wrong to choose it. I just feel like that's one that comes up a lot. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I feel like. And now we are the only film one. But, you're right. It does kind of come up in this context of, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of Hollywood people really love that film.
Sure, but we're just talking about Hollywood people. We're talking about like people that love Tim Burton, that love Edward Scissorhands or love Corpse Bride for the quirkiness.
Corpse Bride. Well, that's a film I don't hear very much about.
But when people think, the casual moviegoer thinks of Tim Burton, they think of Sweeney Todd, they think of Beetlejuice, or they think of the quirky Tim Burton like creatures. Sure. Nobody thinks about a movie about Ed Wood and the B movies in Hollywood.
Okay,
like that's not what they run to.
I certainly don't begrudge you championing in that film. I love it.
I was going to say, maybe Matt, sorry to interrupt.
No.
If you're right, Matt, then you are, that is such an important film for people to know, because I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's him at the height of his powers, and the script is just phenomenal. It's the same guys who wrote Dolomite Is My Name, which I think is another underrated film. And I love Ed Wood so much. I quote it quite often.
Landau's never been better
It's a great cast.
Really?
It's great writing. It's probably Depp's best role in any collaboration he's done.
I was going to say, has Depp ever been better than in Ed Wood? Like, I guess some people love him in Pirates, but
I think he's at his best in Ninth Gate.
And I guess you're right, Colin, in that I'm not trying to I'm not trying to bring. What about the new? But I do think that
No, you know what? I'm wrong. Secret Window. That's when he was at his best.
Secret Window is better than
Secret
Ninth
Window
Gate
is better. Yeah. I do agree that it's not underrated in his filmography, but I think I really want to push.
Okay,
I would. Oh, hold on.
I celebrate.
I want to push and celebrate a movie that is underappreciated by him.
I'm trying to get in your corner. I'm trying to get there. Okay.
He may be.
I don't want you in my corner.
It may be that generational thing that he's talking about, where like
think you're right.
if you go to film school these days, people don't say, "Yeah, Ed Wood, Tim Burton, brilliant."
Yeah,
that's his best.
I'm being hard on you, but I do think that it may be more talked about than you think. But if you get the sense that it's diminishing in the conversation when I was going to say Ed Burns, why? When Burton comes up, then I do think it's worth. At the very least, I'm happy for you to name it because it needs to be front and center.
I don't think that movie comes up at all. And I think within like small circles of film or Hollywood, and like I think we surround ourselves with people that are in the industry. I think yes, that's true. But
right.
in the normal zeitgeist,
well, and you work with way more
culture,
young creatives than
Ed Wood is
do.
not something that comes up at all.
So
it's like Nolan and beyond.
We need to go to TikTok and type in Ed Wood and find out how that
Exactly.
I'm
hashtag
going to do
is
that
doing.
in the past while you guys.
No,
start
that's actually a great exercise, Bill, because I bet.
But a lot of it is going to be like I kind of researched a little bit when I thought of it, and a lot of the articles are Ed Wood is Tim Burton's best film. Why Ed Wood is Tim Burton's best film? Why Ed Wood is forgotten? Why Ed Wood is not talked about enough?
Interesting.
Like, it's a lot of that too.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, so can I ask you? Do you feel like this is not me casting aspersions on it? I love the film. Do you think that's possible that modern young audiences might not champion it for a particular political reason?
No. I think
I was wondering the same thing.
I'm not going to say no because I'm not as knowledgeable if that's a thing or
by the way,
not. But
and not to cut you off, I'm not saying that film is doing anything wrong per se.
No, I didn't think about that at all.
I just wonder if people think it's not the correct representation or and again, I think that movie's like addressing that, and we're talking about and they don't call it transgenderism in the film because that's not what he is. It's just simply a crossdresser.
Crossdresser, yeah.
Although
no, but Bill Murray is
right,
a trans person.
Yeah. So I wonder if there would be some pushback from modern young
TikTok
audiences.
would tell us that, which
certainly
I
will.
can dive into that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think my gut says that it's not about that. It's more about, again, I think newer generations just associate Tim Burton with recent flashier work.
Sure.
And they're not going to run to a black and white movie about a 1950s B movie director that failed in Hollywood.
And look, to be fair, I don't know that Ed Wood made money when it came out. I think it made a big critical splash. I think that critics loved it and film people loved it, but I don't know that it was ever a big money maker.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And I will say that also, as it's you hear a lot about character actors, and that is a who's who of character actors.
Yeah.
And you get performances from people that you might not expect great work from. Like Lisa Marie's like really
She's
good.
great.
Sarah Jessica Parker is good.
Sarah
enough.
Jessica Parker's great. Yeah.
Patricia Arquette, who's not, I don't want to say she's not like a standard of quality, but she's not known for her stirring performances.
What's his name? Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, well, we can let
so much. Yeah,
he's a little bit trouble.
He's been canceled.
Actually, and by the way, speaking of Tim Burton, it's very clear that like the plot device that they've made for Beetlejuice is just to bear he's dead. They
released in the trailer that the thing that brings them back is his funeral,
which is great. I love that. I really hope that that's a return to form for Burton.
So do I.
I hope that Keaton being involved will change things a little bit.
And that's what I'm saying. I think when you talk about Burton or when you talk about what his form was, I think people jump to Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Batman, and then Ed Wood is just not included at all. And it's a good film, but it's just forgotten.
What pops into my mind for forgotten when you said Tim Burton, my mind immediately went to Frankenweenie. I think that's actually pretty slept on.
Are you talking about the feature or the short?
The feature with the live action feature.
I haven't seen
the
the
animated
feature.
one because the animated one was critically lauded, but the animated one was very.
No,
good.
I'm talking about the
one with Vincent Price. Actually,
yes, it's actually pretty damn good, and there's a lot of Pee-wee seeds in there, and I'm pretty sure it's a direct to TV.
Like, didn't Disney try to bury it or something? They just.
I think if I'm not misremembering, it used to be like a Disney Channel staple. Okay, but it's actually quite good. I'd say it's worth checking out. And that's where my mind went. I thought you were about to pull Frankenweenie out on us, so I got excited. But Ed Wood is such a brilliant film. Of course I've given you a hard time, but if you feel like it's disappearing from the conversation, especially amongst younger generations, I applaud you pulling it out.
I think it is, and I think where the tweet that we're basing this off of with Past the Glory, I agree it's not an underrated film at all. But I think what sat with me is that, and what I've kind of been preaching, and I may be off base or whatnot, but Path of Glory is not talked about with Kubrick at all. At least from when I talk to people or whatnot, like that's not a film that comes up. That's fair within the first.
We all traffic in different circles, and I think just by virtue of like the kind of material that you work on, you're working with a lot of young creatives, and I mean, it wouldn't blow my mind if they didn't know Ed Wood, or certainly Paths of Glory. But okay, listen, I respect it. I'm not sure I would have included it, but no.
Matt is shaking his head.
All right, well now you need to go with yours.
Okay, fine. Now you've put this on me. John Borman is known for one film in particular, and I think we can all agree that. Listen, when you hear the phrase "squeal like a pig," you don't think Babe Pig in the City. You don't think.
I love Babe Pig in the City.
I do too. What's another great pig film?
Babe 1.
Babe 1. Yeah.
Sure, Babe. You don't think Babe. No. You think Deliverance, and certainly that is John Borman's most celebrated film. But no, I think that where old Jonathan Bohr gets a little bit slept on is a little ditty from 1981 called Excalibur.
Such an interesting movie.
Now,
was that the one with Sean Connery?
No. Okay. You're thinking First Night.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Or you're thinking Zardoz.
Oh well, yes. So Zardoz, another John Borman film. Yeah. And I would say better known than Excalibur.
Do you think so?
Because
I don't know. I have no idea.
I'd say it's much meme-ified film of his.
Yeah, probably.
And deservedly so. And, people like to make fun of, Connery wearing the red underwear and the bandolier and stuff in Zardoz. But I gotta say, Excalibur, film that in my childhood just did not move me in one direction or the other, but watching it again recently, I gotta tell you, that's a special little film, and I guess I'm a kind of a sucker for Arthurian legend, Arthurian lore. I'm a big fan of the T.H. White book, Once and Future King. Man, it's almost so it's like we were talking about like the unadaptable movies. People talk about Dune that way. Mm-hmm. Dune's the unadaptable movie, and I feel like so much of what has been successful about the old Denis Villeneuve, keeping in spirit of their French-themed show. So part of what is so successful about like what he's done with that is finding a way to make the unadaptable adaptable in a way that's not cringeworthy, even if like hardcore fans of that property will probably take issue with it all day. John Borman with Excalibur, even though it's a strange film, as Bill has intimated, is really successful at taking this really nebulous, hard to translate, very, very long chivalric romance literature and boiling it down into a movie that, as the children like to say, slaps. Is that a thing? Don't shake your head at me. No, look, it's such a strange film, but it's so well done. And I gotta say, it's a who's who of B actors, and not just B actors, people that you know. It's Gabriel Byrne, Liam Neeson, Patrick Stewart, P. Stew, fucking Helen Mirren. By the way, we were talking about the DeLorean earlier.
Yes.
And
if
I could fucking whip that sucker up and it's 85 miles per hour?
88.
If I could 88 miles per hour my way back in time to a 1980s Helen Mirren.
Helen. Hey.
I mean, this is more Barry White.
This is still very wrong, I think.
I just built a time traveling vehicle.
Why is he echoing?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry. I was in.
But Barry, how are you going to compete with her husband?
Well, listen. I don't have to compete so much as we just talked about love triangles, right? She can decide. Okay, Helen, will you be my one betrothed?
Yeah. What's Helen say?
Are you? No, I'm not going to do Helen too.
So
I'm not going to besmirch her.
I literally haven't seen Excalibur since I was a kid. Is Helen Mirren Guinevere?
She's Morgana.
Morgana.
Guinevere is
Okay.
played by an actress named Sherry Lungi, who I don't know.
So as somebody who hasn't seen the film and doesn't understand why it would be underrated,
That's fair.
can you explain why you think it's underrated?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely not talked about and super slept on. Here's what I'll say. John Boorman is celebrated for many films. His most recent film that I can think of that's absolutely celebrated is Taylor, Panama, if I'm not incorrect. Which is also kind of a slept on film, but
I saw that.
It received the critical accolade that it deserved. Excalibur, I think was probably panned by critics.
It wasn't though.
It wasn't? You're saying it was a celebrated film?
According to, I know you don't like the aggregators, but according to the aggregators, it wasn't universally celebrated, but it was
Yeah, but it's hard to know.
celebrated.
It's hard to know. So first of all, if you're looking at, you can talk about audience score.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about
about
the critic score, and again, it's aggregator.
With
but
the aggregator, it's hard to know, and this I'm just gauging this on the IMDb trivia. But apparently, it was mixed reception. When it came out.
it was mixed to better.
right.
Is what it said.
Also, the aggregator may be including more modern reviews
Exactly,
too.
exactly.
Right,
So-
exactly.
But yeah, so this is all to say.
But also, it's still in modern times. It's not spoken about. Boorman was actually in line to do a Lord of the Rings film. He wanted to do Lord of the Rings. And I was thinking about that the other day as I was thinking about the subject. I was trying to think of like what a Boorman Lord of the Rings would be like. And here's the thing. When you watch Excalibur, it's got some cringeworthy performances. It's got some silly, shticky, schlocky elements. I can keep going with the alliteration.
keep going.
Please do.
Simple.
Can Barry Wrong alliterate?
Some sexual. It's definitely sexual. I will say that's super sexy.
Piece 2? Does Piece 2 get sexual?
Piece do no. It's how would you describe it? It's a gritty epic, and you don't get a lot of gritty epics, especially now. Everything is so toned down. Excalibur is a for adults fantasy that is still tonally kind of whimsical or bouncy or effervescent. I don't know. It's tonally, it's like one of the weirdest films of all time, but that's kind of what I love about Boorman.
Yeah.
His weird shit, even like, so you think about Zardoz, right? Zardoz is a weird movie, but it's not a bleak or oppressive. Now, look, Deliverance is a bummer. it's a bummer. But even that has like kind of a playfulness about it. Boorman has this way. Well, yeah, I know, but Boorman has this way of like
Hell of a way to describe that movie.
somebody's getting some play in. No, Deliverance is an oppressive, heavy film. No, but Boorman just has a way of taking adult material and having fun with it. And Excalibur is like, it suits its source material. And if he had done Lord of the Rings, it wouldn't have been nearly as stylized as a Peter Jackson, but it would have been really
It
interesting.
would have been more willowy.
It would have been more adult, I guess. It would have been more mature. Excalibur is a really interesting, mature take on a almost unadaptable source material. I guess I'll just put it that way. Is it perfect? No, but I do have to say Nicole Williamson playing Merlin. It's like one of these roles that you will never find anywhere else. That guy has such a magnetic charisma that it is just really fun. I really urge people to check it out. I think it's really slept on. I could be wrong, but I don't hear a lot of people introducing old Excalibur into discussion. So in lieu of going down a fucking John Boorman IMDb
John Boorman hole.
Here's what I will say against it. It's yeah, we go down Boorman's hole all the time. I'll say this. Its three leads are the most like are have like no wattage. Like maybe that's why it doesn't have like a lot of staying power. It's like if Mark Hamill was the lead of every film. It's just like, but Good stuff. All right. I digress. This is not.
Borman is such an interesting director for taking huge swings and sometimes missing and other times hitting it quite solidly. And like, so it's interesting to watch him take those swings. And
Yeah.
it seems like Excalibur both has strong and weaker points. I need to revisit it. I haven't seen it in ages. I literally saw it on TV or something when I was a kid. And I thought it was kind of scary, actually, I think, when I saw it as a kid. Because isn't there a character that's called Lucifer or something, and is in wears golden armor? Or am I just?
It is truthful to the Arthurian legend stuff, and it condenses a lot of things. In fact,
There isn't a character in golden armor?
there's a character in white armor. There's but that's I can't think of a character in golden armor.
Okay.
Now Merlin is wearing like a silver. It looks like a urinal cake guard over his head.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. But no, I mean, and there is like a bit of rape in the film, not to be triggering, but yeah, it's a triggered, but it's a bit of it takes on some adult things.
Look at that guy. That's golden, isn't it?
I don't remember this fellow.
It looks golden.
Yeah, he's in Excalibur.
No, I don't remember him.
See?
Okay, I mean, so it's a rich film, and that's the other thing. I mean, it's not a well choreographed action film by any stretch of the imagination, but it is
Not as good as Phantom Menace.
Certainly not.
But man, there was thank you. Phantom Menace is coming back out to theaters, and they did a full campaign of like how people were loving Phantom Menace, and it was like their first Star Wars.
There's a lot of revisionist history on that shit.
Phantom Menace is part of the whole like movement. Not to take us on a tangent, but there's like a huge movement of bringing back movies for like a week into theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man just came
back.
The
Abyss.
The Lord of the Rings are coming back for a week. The Abyss, like. And Phantom Menace is coming back.
I celebrate that. I don't know what it's leading up to, but I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I am as too.
Yeah. Anyways, let's not go down Borman's hole. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying he's got a way of now. Obviously, he's got he like Bill says, he's got some swings and misses. His Exorcist 2s, etc. that are hard to parse.
I love Point Blank. Lee Marvin.
Okay, yeah. I mean, God, I don't know. How is that movie received?
When it came out, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously now looking back, a lot of people respect it and love it.
I will say that I've actually never seen Hope and Glory.
I haven't seen Hope and Glory either.
Yeah, and that's like his Oscar nom film aside from Deliverance. So so maybe I'm like taking a weird detour with this one because like. It's kind of a question. It's like, how well known is Borman? He's definitely not well known now, but he was a big deal 1970 through the aughts. So
well, yeah. So we're all kind of 2 for 2. We're kind of going into we're
jumping around.
We're teetering into the movies for a little bit of the reason that they're not talked about.
Yeah.
Like so. Yeah. How dare you yell at me, Redwood? Not being talked about. And then say this movie is your choice because it's not talked about.
It's going to be all right. Okay?
Oh, no.
Don't very wrong me.
Oh, no.
Listen, remember the good times. Think about the good times.
There were no good times.
It's always been good times.
There's never been good times.
For our love.
Lost.
Okay, fine. Bill?
Yes.
Can you lay on us an underrated film from a well-known quote-unquote director?
Maybe Bill will follow the prompt to the T.
There's no following it to a T.
I don't know about that.
It's a weird prompt.
You guys may disagree on this, but I feel like when I saw this film, and I saw it when it came out, a lot of people were saying negative things about it, including critics. And I said, 10, 20 years from now, this movie is going to be reevaluated and people are going to realize that this is a great film. And this often happens with Stanley Kubrick's movies.
Crash. Oh, I was gonna say.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay, nice.
Okay, I think Eyes Wide Shut, since this gentleman, Depressed Bergman, was talking about Paths of Glory.
Depressed Bergman, DGB.
I feel like there are other films in his filmography. One is also Killer's Kiss, which has problems, but is really interesting, especially for such an early filmmaker. When that was like his second feature, and or his first. Anyway, and then when he made Eyes Wide Shut as his last, I really loved that film, based on the book Trom Novelle by Arthur Schnitzler. And, I've never been married, but it brought me into this space of fidelity, infidelity, staying in love with your partner, going through, right. Interesting that's the password. And going through periods where, rough parts that can happen in any marriage. I don't mind his sort of fantasy New York. I'm fine with that he built sets in London because he didn't want to fly, or
so I thought it was Toronto or Canada somewhere.
No, I believe it was in England.
Okay.
But I don't know what part of England. He was at that point, I think, almost exclusively shooting in England, like he did with Full Metal Jacket, which is fascinating. But Full Metal Jacket is really well received now. But yeah, I feel like Eyes Wide Shut is still due for reappraisal. I think it's a wonderful film. I think it's one of his best. Yes, I said it. And I encourage everybody to take a look.
So I have, there has been, and this is why I kind of am grateful that you're not an ex stalwart, because there has been a bit of a film Twitter
I was going to say, it's been popping up a lot recently.
But I think to the spirit of, I think that a general audience, has all but forgotten it, and I agree with you that it is absolutely a slept on Kubrick masterpiece. Might be going a bit far, but it has such a depth to it that we don't talk about, I guess.
It's kind of having the same... It feels like The Shining had this wave of love for it like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. At least in my... From I remember, like, The Shining had a big wave of like revisionist history of everybody loves it, everyone needs to go see it again. And it does feel like recently Eyes Wide Shut has been getting its love.
But also, I think that The Shining was probably better received upon first... When it came out than Eyes Wide Shut was.
True.
Although it did have its detractors. Like Stephen King. But I mean, I think overall it did better. It was a horror film, so it's inherently more commercial in this country. But yeah, Eyes Wide Shut just really didn't get the love it deserved. And I'm glad to hear that on X or whatever it's called, that it's starting to pop
I don't
up.
know if it's universal, though. I just think that there has been like a bit of a film Twitter.
Yeah. Our algorithms are just showing that it's popping up more.
Yeah, or there are some better known Twitter personalities that are championing it recently. Right. But no, I think in the general discussion it is still slept on. And so let me ask you this. Have you heard the, it could be apocryphal, the Harvey Keitel walkout story about that film?
Yes, I have. Okay. Tell it, because I'd like...
No. Well, so I don't know if I'll be getting it right, but it sounds like, so obviously he was tapped to... Which role was he tapped to
He was playing the role that eventually went to Sidney Pollack.
Yes, okay. And they one of the earlier scenes that they shot was the scene with Sidney and Tom Cruise in his parlor. They're
in the pool parlor room.
And I believe during that scene, Kubrick, as is his wont, wanted to shoot 200 takes.
A few takes.
Yeah, like walking into the room. And... Keitel, I think, got maybe 20 or 30 takes in and said, to hell with this, and fucked right off. Imagining Harvey Keitel.
I would believe it.
What's that?
I would imagine it happened.
Yeah, well, but it's interesting because when you think about Kubrick, some of the stuff that makes the final cut feels like it was a gem that an editor kind of discovered, like maybe like that speaks to Kubrick's not a formulaic filmmaker.
Well, that could be part of the process. I mean, Fincher does that where he's like, I do 100 takes and then I might still take 3 or take 52 or whatnot. So
who's Fincher's editor? Is it Kirk Alexander?
At the moment, it's Kirk Baxter.
Baxter.
Yeah.
Yes. So that poor man. No, I'm sure those films are a joy to work on. I think about Eyes Wide Shut, and it's so much of what people talked about it in the time was Kubrick's death and the interplay between Kidman and Cruise. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the content of the film people talked about the surroundings of that film and not the content of it, I guess.
I think that they were put off by the sort of artificial New York City streets that didn't seem realistic, with not enough people on them, not enough trash on them, maybe, details that they were quibbling about. I don't think that that's important to the story. I think, it's city, anywhere city.
Well, the funny thing is I've seen a lot of posts that are glamorizing how New York was depicted in the film on social media.
Really?
Yeah,
that's strange.
Well, that's definitely, I think, more recent.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of look how pretty New York was in this film. And
Well, now, am I wrong?
It's not New York.
Yeah, I know, right?
Wasn't there also like a rear projection situation going on where they were walking against the screen, basically?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Like on a treadmill or something.
Just to correct myself from earlier too, I think I said Killer's Kiss. That was definitely his second feature. First feature was Fear and Desire. Sorry, just for a moment there, I was unclear in my head.
I'm actually not Kubrick's early work is in fact I think I come in Kubrick around Paths of Glory.
That's a good place to come in.
Well, where does Lolita fit?
Lolita is right before Doctor Strangelove, so I think so. It's like 1960 around there,
62.
Yeah, and then Strangelove's right after that.
Okay. What about Eyes Wide Shut particularly? Do you feel like needs to re-enter the conversation? Like, what about it?
I think it's one of his most overtly emotional films, which obviously Kubrick was known as a kind of objective, cold, analytical filmmaker in many ways. Like if you watch Barry Lyndon or really any of his latter day films, I feel, although there is still that objectivity in Eyes Wide Shut, it's almost like he's, to go back to Romer, he's doing a simple relationship film, but Kubrick style. And I find that fascinating because usually his topics would be very grandiose, like the evolution of man in 2001, or, the Vietnam War in Full Metal Jacket, or, this is a house that's haunted with spirits, but there's a kid that has powers, the very extraordinary circumstances of some kind or another, whether realistic or fantastical. Eyes Wide Shut is about a married couple. Yeah. It's about two people.
Though the elephant in the room, though, and I think a lot of people, at least my memory when that film came out, is a lot of people got hung up on these lavish orgy scenes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is probably speaks to my friend circle, but I think a lot of people were disappointed I think a lot of people saw the trailer with, Baby Did a Bad Thing by Chris Isaac playing over it, and they thought, oh, this is, it's Warner Brothers made a porno. And that's not what it is at all.
Yeah, and you see these scenes of Nicole Kidman standing around in her negligee or whatever, and like people go, oh, this is just going to be this seductive, prurient thing, and it ends up that is some of the most chaste drama. Like, not to say that there's no intrigue in it, but it's just some of the most honest couples drama that you can imagine.
Right,
and obviously there's certainly intrigue there, and there's a mystery at the heart of it. But I mean, their drama, their dynamic is so much more important than who's following Tom Cruise down these London rear projected New York streets.
People thought that they were going to see Tom and Nicole going at it in a movie, and what they got was,
I don't know, Tom.
What they got was a man descending into a kind of fever dream about fidelity and about working through, one's own issues with their marriage.
Yeah.
Each character that he meets, whether it's the Lily Sobieski girl in the mask shop, or whether it's the trying to think of the name of the great actress who plays the lady of the night that came, the college student, and
his jazz
friend, buddy who is
great.
Yeah, it's Todd Fields, who's a director.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just like all these different, it's like this odyssey in this dream.
Yeah.
And it's very simple, but it's beautiful, and it's I don't know, I find it really intriguing. I love the technical proficiency in it too, inventiveness. Like Kubrick was still doing snap zooms when everybody was saying that is really lame, and Kubrick just did not stop. Yeah. And there are snap zooms in Eyes Wide Shut before it came back with Kill Bill or whatever, might have repopularized it. And they're great. They're great zooms. They're, he just knew how to use the vocabulary of cinema in order to make a scene a little more interesting, a little more salient, a little more powerful than it would otherwise be from somebody else who's just doing shot reverse shot. There's also the wonderful scene at the beginning where Tom and Nicole are at that party, and then Nicole starts dancing with this Hungarian man who's trying to seduce her.
Right.
Just a lot of really fun conversations between people.
Yeah.
I guess the moral of today's episode, at least for me, is that I like people talking in movies for some reason. Mm-hmm. One of the things that struck me with his movies, and one of the things that bothered me for a while, even though I was really drawn into them, was that I felt that they were too cold, that they were too objective and things like that. And I was wondering, why do I have this feeling? Why does he feel this way? They grew on me the more I watched them. And eventually I came to the conclusion that I think Kubrick was a very emotional man inside, and that he was protecting himself. This is just my own, pop psychology. And that he tried to be as objective and as fair to his characters as possible, and to show the audience truth in his own way, even, with fantasy pieces. And I went to a screening of a documentary about Kubrick, and his brother-in-law, Jan Harlan, was there, who was also his producer.
Okay.
And I said to him, I want to ask you about Kubrick. And he said, okay, what is it? And I said, was he an emotional man? And he said to me, he was an emotional beast.
Really?
And I was like, okay, now I understand Kubrick. So anyway, fun little story.
I do wonder about that, because I do think you're right. There is a coldness to his filmmaking, but I think that's always rooted in something very human.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, that's well, okay. I like it. I like that we've all come from really weird angles, and we've all approached this from a scanted lens, which I appreciate.
Well, at the very end of it, at least we are hopefully enticing or encouraging our listeners and other people to revisit or visit them for the first time.
Now, did you guys have backup? We shouldn't discuss them.
I did, but it's the same line as Ed Wood.
It's okay. Just throw it out there.
It was Mank. Fincher.
Like it? What was your backup, Bill? I know you had one.
Well, I was going to talk about Killer's Kiss at first.
Okay, so you were always going to Kubrick.
And then I switched, because I felt like there were so many other films that we could talk about that are more slept on than Paths of Glory.
Okay, all right.
What was yours?
It was Mr. Death. It was a documentary, an Errol Morris documentary.
Oh.
Nobody talks about that film, and I think that's a really interesting movie and kind of salient now with what's going on in the news in interesting ways we won't tackle on the show ever because we're cowards. Anyway, good stuff, guys. Well, I guess that only leaves one last thing. Third segment.
What?
Which is to explore a mysterious media oddity. We're going to do that right now.
Greetings, my friend. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here. And now, for the first time, we are bringing you the full story of what happened. We are giving you all the evidence, based only on the secret testimony of the miserable souls who survived this terrifying ordeal. The incidents, the places. My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Can your heart stand the shocking facts of the true story of Edward D. Wood, Jr.?
So, third of the three ways that we adjudicate the film space, because we're the only authorities that are properly equipped to do so, is by examining a mysterious media oddity. And today we have an interesting one. What do you see, Bill?
No. Is that Alan Thicke?
No.
Am I supposed to know who that? Should I know who that is?
I'm going to just tell you who it is. It's Barry Williams. Who's that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
He's a...
He looks like from the Brady Bunch.
There you go.
You're exactly right.
You did it. Yes.
It's Mike Brady. Okay.
It's the eldest Brady. And he just wants to rap with us for a minute. So let's just hear what he's got to say. He's got a pitch for us. All right.
Oh man.
Can you describe how he's dressed, Mr. Frank?
Super late 80s, early 90s tie-dye shirt with overalls. Are those overalls?
I think those are just yellow.
What is this
suspenders.
lav mic? Is that a lav mic?
He's
the
got
biggest lav mic
he's
I've
got
ever
a
seen in my
handheld
life.
Mic.
I don't-
Got a-
Okay, so it's a handheld mic that
This
has
is
a very
little look.
big.
Let's just dive right into it. Now, we'll try to describe what's going on as it's happening, but we're going to be overshadowed.
We're going to watch it through first.
We're going to watch it through, and then we'll go back through it.
Here's the story
He's singing.
of a man named Healy
Okay.
who was working with three very funny guys.
Oh, he's talking about.
One of them had funky hair.
Oh no.
One had a bowl cut.
Yep.
The youngest one was bald.
You guys think who this is?
A brother Shemp.
Oh boy.
He performed with the boys in vaudeville.
Yep.
He came back
Vaudeville.
in 47 when Curly became ill.
So we're seeing the Three
Here's the
Stooges.
story. What happened later? Shemp passed on, and Moe and Larry wept.
Singing a song for us.
They couldn't find another partner. There's no one to accept.
Filled out their
Till
squares.
One day when they brought in
Don't worry.
Joey Besser,
There's a reason they
the
did this
flying
bit.
solo was more his cup of tea. So they hired Curly Joe to read it.
Yeah, it's getting winded now.
That's the way they remain the Stooges 3.
The Stooges 3.
Stooges 3. The Stooges 3. Oh, that's the way.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Remain.
Is he an Elvis now?
The Stooges 3.
Barry.
No.
So
He was hurting for money when he
That's
did this.
unfortunate.
So I found this. There was a real concern,
This screen, this frame that we ended on.
Recent legislation in our country has decided that TikTok might go away.
What?
And there was a frenzy. There was a frenzy on old
TikTok.
X about what might become of all of our precious ticks and talks. And in a kind of Noah's Ark, digital Noah's Ark, all these people were posting these things that they found on TikTok that they felt like they couldn't find anywhere else, this is actually not in the TikTok format. So I'm not sure why this applies here, but this was presented as somebody was like, look, I have to throw this on the lifeboat of needs to be preserved.
They had to preserve this
from TikTok. So what we just saw
They had a digital Smithsonian this.
is Barry Williams. Yes, they did. Barry Williams had to get paid. I'm going to say 1999, maybe.
No, it's earlier
odds.
than that.
No, I don't know.
Guys, don't go by his fashion because he's wearing a butterfly collar and what looks like it was made out of a tablecloth and some yellow suspenders.
Yeah, he's got some wild and crazy guy look about him. What is this? What is this, Matt?
97.
Okay, you looked this. You've seen this.
I looked it up.
Look at you. You're like what's Rogan's stooge? What's that little dork's name?
I'm not going to answer that because you just called me a stupid
Well, not
stooge.
you. I'm just dunking on Rogan. I want to take every chance to dunk on Rogan that I can.
You know
Anyway,
that, Joe. He looks like Hasselhoff here.
Spotify immediately cancels all of our episodes.
He looks like the Hoff. With those glasses.
Yeah. What was this? What was this 97 thing?
Oh, I didn't look up what it was.
But
just
I'm
looked
asking
up the
you,
year.
what do you think it is?
It's a Tonight Show-esque variety show that they had him come out to do a bit.
You're so generous, Bill. What is this?
It's Barry Williams singing about the Three Stooges, their career, and the various Stooges that replaced previous Stooges that passed away. And
Absolutely.
he's singing it in the Brady Bunch song music theme.
Yes. Now, why would they do this? I don't know, but I'm willing to bet this is direct marketing. By which I mean, back in the day, children, there used to be a time when your favorite programs would end and you didn't have a way to stream other programs unless you had a VHS player or DVD player. When your regular program schedule ended, they had to fill that air with something, and it would usually be filled with direct marketing. Proactive commercials, Tony Robbins. Sometimes, if we were lucky enough, we would be blessed with like a 30-minute program of somebody hawking like a CD or a DVD collection or like a...
So you're saying this is an infomercial?
I'm willing to, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just willing to bet this is direct marketing infomercial. I bet after this, I just feel like this is probably, they were going to like wheel somebody out that was still remaining amongst the, by the way, he calls them the Stooges 3.
Stooges 3.
Let's go through this just briefly. First of all, by the way, truly depressing
It is
to watch.
I got to tell you, Colin, I agree. This is really depressing.
It's hard to watch. It's a hard watch. I told you it'd be depressing.
Pretty cringeworthy.
Story of a man named Healy.
Okay, so he's got picture of old Healy, and by the way, can you explain what's happening to the pictures of the Stooges as they
Who was working with three very funny guys.
Gift them in a way.
One of them.
they've like gifted them, but like with 2 shots, so
Yeah.
they look like they're
Just
having
2
like
frames,
they look like they're having
strokes.
Yeah, absolutely.
had funky hair.
Or maybe
One had a
few
bowl
frames.
Especially
cut.
Curly over there.
It's really disturbing.
Well, that's not
one
Curly.
was-
Curly's down there.
Mo looks like he's having a stroke. Curly.
It's the story of Brother Shemp.
Now, Shemp looks
Shemp gets a raw deal, I think.
really. It's just an unfortunate still that
They
chosen.
chose that on purpose.
It's hard to look at.
He performed with the boys in vaudeville.
His tongue is wagging.
He came back
Yeah,
in 47
It's just a
when
very
Curly became
unfortunate.
ill. Here,
No. So
Became ill.
one of the Marx brothers died of cancer, and the others got filled. It's like it's. By the way, I was always a Marx Brothers guy instead of a Stooges guy, but that's neither here nor there.
God, that is the oldest thing you've ever said.
Fuck you.
I love Marx Brothers.
There you go.
And the Stooges. Yeah.
You know what? I draw my line in the sand.
here's the story. What happened later? Shemp passed on, and Mo and Larry wept.
Yeah. Do you think they were going to celebrate this, Barry? Why did you have to include it in the song? You're trying to sell us on this. It's really.
Who agreed to license these things to these people? Like how did the Brady Bunch song
Exactly. Thank you, Bill. What does the Brady Bunch have to do with any of this? Now, do you think,
what is the point of this whole thing?
well, obviously, I think they're trying to sell a DVD package. This is my guess.
They couldn't find another partner. There's no one to accept.
Now, also, the songwriting, I have to say,
writing,
just miserable?
it's just really hard to accept that somebody, because look, I worked in direct marketing for a little while, right?
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it, but I did it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, you gotta earn paychecks somewhere,
Absolutely.
but they never sunk to these lows. I mean, why do I bring this up? Because that was less cringeworthy than what we're seeing.
Till the one day when they brought in Joey Besser. The flying solo was more his cup of tea. So they hired Curly Joe Dorita. That's the way they remain the Stooges 3. The Stooges 3.
Now that's got to be the worst part. Like
Because they couldn't rhyme.
the
without
Stooges 3. God damn it, dude! It just hurts so bad to see it.
The Stooges 3.
Now he's about to do a real breakdown for us.
Well, that's the way.
Elvis
The way they
thing.
remain.
Sunglasses came out.
Do you think he brought that up
Meanwhile-
and he's like, I'll only do this if I get to do my Elvis impression?
I don't. I looked into old Barry Williams. Okay, really melted for us.
I'm so sad for him.
Yeah, that's why
I'm so sad for him.
I kind of looked into his shit, and like this is all he does. It's just Brady Bunch related shit. Now he was in Dickie Wonder or whatever the child star actor movie that David Spade did. What was that movie?
Dickie Roberts?
Dickie Roberts. So he wasn't Dickie Roberts.
It's probably it for
I don't
like
know
a
why I know
scene.
that.
Probably as
Yeah, because I think there's like a scene in the beginning of the movie where
probably
it's like
as the elder Bradys.
yeah, it's like a one-hit wonder scene where they have like a group, and I think he's in that scene.
And a company that you and I may have worked for has a very Brady restoration program.
Ugh.
And I'm not going to say how I feel about it other than good night and good luck. I just, Jesus fucking Christ. This poor man. I guess I wanted, we had such uplifting tales of meditative French countrysides and wonderful films.
You just wanted to depress us.
I just wanted to send you on the lowest note, send you home on the lowest note possible. No, listen,
Thank you.
this was just, I saw it and I thought, how does this exist? Actually, and yes, it came across somebody I follow. Literally, the tweet was, I think I just discovered the single worst minute in the history of television. And yeah,
It's not great.
well, I'm glad that I could bring us all down.
We're just normal men.
And we are probably, I think, at our wits' end. Woo! Thank you for joining us on Cast Against Type. CastAgainstType@gmail.com. Cast Against Type on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube and Amazon.
Yep.
I said that in a strange cadence. Don't worry about it. Email us or Gmail us at castagainsttype@gmail.com with your queries, concerns, or you can just drop us a DM in one of those socials. What socials would those be?
Cast Against Type at Instagram and TikTok.
Tickings and talkings, which I have still not stepped foot in our
You don't have to.
Well, apparently that's where we get the most traction. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're a world-class raconteur, film describist, analyst, maker, writer.
Keep going.
Please check out Bill's work. Bill, is there somewhere that you'd like our listeners, our droves of followers to follow you?
If you want to follow me, you can just look me up at williamboudel.com if you'd like.
WilliamBoudel.com. Do it. Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for putting up with our chaos.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
We're just normal men.